Welcome to Corks and Conversation with Jasmine Guillory.
I've been looking so very forward to talking with her. We're branching out today from our normal crime fiction to romance for a special episode.
I love the romance.
I love the romance too. Jasmine Guillory is a New York Times best-selling author. Her novels include The Wedding Date, the Reese Witherspoon Club selection, The Proposal, not a bad gig there,
Right.
and By the Book. Her work has appeared in the Wall Street Journal, Cosmopolitan, Bon Appetit, Time. She's a frequent book contributor on the Today Show, which I always love. Her latest book I'm holding up here, it's called Drunk on Love, and it is set in Napa Valley, and it's coming out to rave reviews, like this one from a starred review from Publishers Weekly. The lush background and Guillory's signature blend of sexy, sweet, and funny keeps the pages flying. This is a gem, and we could not agree more. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be talking to you guys.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So normally, this is the part of time when we introduce the wine that we're drinking. And, of course, we know Jasmine would be drinking wine. Yes. Because her book is set in, California wine country, but it's a little early because we're recording. Yeah. We're
you guys. Yeah.
So
it's okay for us, and we're at a conference, so it's more wine time here.
Exactly. But so we did pick out a wine anyway that it's a California wine, and I don't know if you could see this with the reflection, perfect. But it's Lovely You.
So it's perfect for a romance.
Yes.
Awesome. Yes, perfect.
So later when you're done with all your obligations, you can grab a bottle of Lovely You because it looks like it's low calorie too. 0 sugar.
Oh, that was an accidental purchase. I didn't mean for it to be low calorie.
Well, I'm very, very happy. I'm very happy for that.
Well, we will say cheers to you and your lovely, lovely new release.
Yes, we enjoy it. Cheers.
Okay. We never get to do this in person. We're usually in 2 different states, so we're like, I don't
know,
know what to do with
weird.
You. Like, get off me.
I know. Cathi and I are in the same room. Yes. So anyway, before I start with the questions, let me give the listeners a little bit of a synopsis of the book. And basically, it's Margot Noble. Am I pronouncing her name right? Because
absolutely, yes.
When you read it, we
had a debate. Is it Nobel or Noble?
So anyway, she is she's stressed out running the family business, which is a winery, with her brother. And what happens is she meets this guy at a bar, and she's all happy, gonna get rid of some stress. This is the part that I was like wishful thinking, doing this. And then she goes to work the next day, and Luke, the guy that she had met, is now one of her employees.
Her one-night stand is now her employee. I love it.
Yes. So we can imagine all the things that ensue, but it was just a page turner.
Really good premise.
Really, really, really good. Yeah. And we love the setting, as we said, because it's at a vineyard. And so I was wondering, what inspired you to put it at a vineyard?
Yeah, this setting was really what came first to me about this book. When I finished While We Were Dating, which was my 6th book, I knew that was going to be kind of the last of the books in the wedding date extended universe, I guess. And so I was really thinking what I knew that By the Book, which was my last book, was going to be next, which is a kind of contemporary reimagining of Beauty and the Beast, but I didn't know what was going to come after that. And so I had a kind of panicked conversation with my agent, I don't know what I'm going to do next. My agent was like, it's okay, it'll come to you. And I was like, I don't know if it will. And then the next day I thought, oh, what about Napa Valley? And that is really kind of what started it. Because I live in Northern California, I'm, about an hour away from Napa. So I go there pretty frequently for day trips, or, sometimes weekend getaways with friends and family. And so it felt like a great place to set a book, partly because I know it well enough. There was also still things to discover about it. And so that was really fun. And then once
Fun research, right?
Yeah, exactly. Really great research. And so once I knew it was going to be in Napa Valley, then I was like, oh, well, I have to set it at a winery. At least one of the main characters will, be a winery owner. What will they do? How will that work? What's the size of the winery? And so really figuring out the answers to some of those questions made me understand Margot and kind of know where she was coming from and who she was. And so then once I knew all of that, it was like I kind of knew the beginning of the book and some of the things that she would go throughout it. And so that like kind of got me started on the book.
One of the things we normally read and do podcasts on crime fiction. Honestly, your books are my very recent discovery of romance. I just hadn't really read romance, and Christie's been a long time romance reader, which I didn't know. We'd never even talked about that until last night.
It's my little secret guilty pleasure, I guess.
Yeah, it shouldn't be secret for one thing. We have to talk about that. That makes me crazy because why is it?
Well, it's not really a secret, but it doesn't come up that often.
You know what though? I think. And actually has made me, I'm writing a thriller, but I'm actually like, I really want to write some romance. And I think part of it is I feel joyful when I read your books. And I don't really get joyful feelings from a lot of crime fiction. I mean, they have their own absolute wonderful attributes. It's great to have things wrapped up and feel like, what would I do and how would I handle this? But I was like, oh, it's a really amazing feeling of joy. So there's that, but also your characters are very real and they have very real world problems. And so I was wondering, how do you develop that? Like, how do you decide, you've had interracial couples before, you have race in Napa Valley and tech world issues and brother-sister issues in this book. So how do you decide what you want to delve into?
I mean, I feel like it is often the characters who lead me in that direction. So sometimes I go into a book thinking it's going to be about something, but I kind of think of characters and then in the process of writing the book, I figure them out more and more. And so then I really learn like, oh, that's what this book is going to be about. Okay. And I think that was something that it took me a while to kind of figure out because, at first when I was writing, I would kind of try to force books to be about what I thought they would be about. But then often the character doesn't seem real because you're bending a character to a plot, and it works much better for me to bend a plot for the character. And so there have been times in books where there were certain things that I had in an outline. And then once I sort of got to that point in the book, I was like, oh, but this character would never do that. And I was like, well, the outline's got to change, the plot has to change because I know who this character is now. Like I know who this person is and they would never do that. So you're either writing a book about someone who would do that or you're writing a book about this character. And and it's often I'm writing a book about this character. How do I fix it? And so that has been a really good kind of learning experience for me in being able to be more open and flexible with plots and timelines, and because it's really serving the characters and not, anything else that I had in mind for the story.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's really interesting because I like a plot and I like an outline.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. She's very much like that.
Yeah, but I had read and worked with Lisa Cron, who really advocates about
I love her books. I love her books.
I do too. And actually I have an email in my inbox from her right now. She was giving me what she called the gentle nudge. Lisa, I haven't responded. I'm sorry.
Like I'm a little busy. I'm interviewing Jasmine, drinking wine.
But this priorities. But I love that you can start with an outline and a plan, but then as you get in your writing and your drafting, you get to know your character, then it sounds like you need to just adjust as you go.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of adjustment as I go and sort of a lot of figuring out like in this book, actually I ended up writing the first draft of this book all by hand, which is
Wow.
not something that I recommend
How
at
many
all.
words is the
However,
book? How many?
oh, and that's the other thing. This book is my longest book, and my first drafts are often much longer than the final book. So this book ended up being so long when I read the first draft. And then I had to like type up the whole thing, right? Like, and I did that one time before, and I don't like finish it and then type it up. Like once I kind of realize, okay, this is a book, I start typing. So I'm usually kind of typing and writing, not quite simultaneously, because there's often a big delay in between like when I'm typing up. And so with this book, there was one time when I sort of took myself to a hotel for a weekend and just was like, all right, I have a bunch of the book to type up. I'm going to just concentrate on doing that. And as I did it, I realized that there were things that I kind of kept repeating over and over again in the book that I hadn't noticed before. And I was like, why do I keep saying that? Why does it keep doing that? Oh, that's what has to happen. Like that's
So you were kind of subconsciously getting there, but you just hadn't even identified that yet?
Exactly. And that's often what happens. Like I've talked to other writers who are like, yeah, in my third draft, I realized, oh, that's what this whole book is about. And I think that often happens to me in that, you're writing into something that you don't even realize is happening. And then it kind of, I think honestly doing, writing the first draft and then having to type it made me understand that a little faster, because I had to, because I'm not a person who edits as I write. I just sort of like dive into a draft and keep going. But that made me like not quite edit as I wrote, but keep like reread what I was writing and really think about it. And in that thinking, I really kind of figured out what these characters really cared about and what their story was about, and that like gave me a real path to this book.
So you normally don't do the longhand? It was a new process for this book?
Yeah, I did that one other time. I did it with my sixth book while we were dating. And that was very much that was, I started writing that book in May of 2020.
Okay.
I had planned to start writing it at, the beginning of April 2020. I was going to start outlining in March. And that didn't happen. And for, many reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so when I started writing it, I was just sort of like, okay, but this isn't a book. I can't write a book in the middle of all of this. I'm just writing in a notebook. Just me writing in a notebook of just things. And often actually I do write like the very beginning of a book in a notebook because I hate a blank Word document. And so like I will like write like the first 1,000 words and then type it up and then be like, okay, now it's not blank anymore. Now I have a beginning and I keep going. But this time it felt like pulling out my laptop seemed like, I don't know.
Right.
That seems like work, and I don't know if I can do work now. I'm just writing a story for myself. And then finally, while we were dating, I was like, okay, fine. I guess this is a book. I should start typing it. And so then I didn't do that by the book, which is the book I wrote in between. But I realized that I missed it at certain times. Like there were certain times when I would pull out a notebook to like write certain things and kind of missed that. I don't know, that like tactile connection to the story that I don't have in other ways. And so this time I didn't really intend to go back to doing it that way, but that's just sort of what happened. The next book we'll see.
That's my next question.
It is every time I do it, I'm like, it makes no sense. Never do this again. And then, it happens. So.
Well, it reminds me of when I was in college and I would take notes, and then in order to, this was graduate school when I was a lot more ambitious. Then I would come back and I would be like, okay, now I'm going to type the notes. And then while you're typing it, you realize, okay, what I wrote here doesn't make as much sense, so I can fix that. And it might be, it might be not a bad idea. You might have come up with some kind of
except your hand is dead.
I know. And also half the time I don't like my handwriting's terrible, right? And so I'm like, what was that
did I
word?
say?
And so I'm trying to interpret by context, like what I was thinking. I'm like, is that an F or a G? Or like,
Oh, wow.
is that a P? Or like, and so sometimes now at least I know that I do that. And so when I scribble something, I try to like print very carefully about what it was, but it's still
I do love though that you just sometimes have to fool yourself, get out of your own brain. And so if it's, writing by hand, I mean, that's
Right.
a great thing for other writers to hear because, or anybody, readers too, for any task you have that seems overwhelming, find a different way until you can figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of writing is kind of tricking yourself into things, right? Like every book I've ever written has started as a note on my phone. And a lot of, and it's like, so it usually does not have a title. I'm at the beginning just sort of brainstorming things, but that gives me a start, and sort of whatever gives you a start is kind of the thing that's going to help, I think one of the things that has helped me in listening to other writers is like, there is no one way. There's whatever way works for you. And so I think I've experimented with lots of different things that work. And like, sometimes they work for me and sometimes they don't. And sometimes something that didn't work for me before works for me with the next book. It feels like whatever works for you in your brain and whatever period you are in your life, like just go with it.
Yeah. I love that each book is its own experience, that there's never a same, because you're 6 books in, right? But you're still finding new ways. I just think that's says a lot about writing and a lot about life, I think, all right there. Okay, so normally when we're all together, we would say it's time for a little sip of our cocktail. Christy, we're kind of, you're so hard to get along with when we're together. It's awful. So we are going to do what we call the question in the bottle, where Christy at home in Florida, she has a carafe of weird questions and then she pulls one out.
All right. So the question today is, how often do you stay up past 3 a.m.?
I mean, unfortunately, relatively often, but that's never on purpose, because it's usually when I can't sleep that I'm up past 3 a.m. So it's probably at least once a month, but it's like very rarely on purpose.
So you just can't fall asleep, so you're up?
Yes, but the thing is that I am a night owl anyway. Like if the question had been how often do you stay up past midnight, the answer would have been basically every day, because my normal bedtime is somewhere in between midnight and 1 a.m. So then if my normal time of falling asleep is somewhere around 1 a.m., occasionally I can't fall asleep for a few hours and I'm like, okay, now it's 3:30. What are you gonna do?
So are you productive at night, or are you just
no, absolutely. Well, okay. Usually
probably later than we are.
With when I wrote while we were dating, that was the very early stages of the pandemic, and my insomnia was terrible then, so I was always up really late. So like a good portion of that book I wrote between like 1 and 2 in the morning. I will say, because I was like, well, I mean, I can't sleep, so I might as well just work on my book. So I would, and also I think that was one of the convenient things about writing it by hand, is like I would just have the notebook next to me in bed, and so I was like, all right, well, just turn on the light and sit up and write a little bit more.
But now the handwriting's worse then.
Yes. But normally no. Like normally I will just sort of like sit up and read a little bit and then hopefully fall back asleep.
Yeah.
But I know the answer for you, because we're both morning people.
Yeah.
But you have a lot of insomnia too, so I'd say.
Yeah, but mine is more like I'll fall asleep and then I wake up in the middle of the night. So I might be up at, between 2 and 4, so therefore it's after 3 a.m., but that's sort of a lie, because I went to bed at like 10 and yeah, because I try to stay up to 10 and I'll fall asleep.
No.
Well, because it's hard.
No, I know. I
and she gets up at 3 a.m.
Well,
so you are up after 3 a.m.
I try. 4 o'clock is my sweet spot, but I sometimes
4 o'clock. You get up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
I do. I love early morning. Okay, but I'm telling you, if you called me at 8:30 at night, don't trust anything I say because I'm worthless. Like
Yeah.
my kids are like, oh, it's 8:15. Don't call her. Like it's pathetic. I love early mornings. I naturally a riser, but I do tend to wake up before my alarm goes off, and it's often towards the, and it's not cute. I'm not happy because it's too late and too early and whatever. Anyway,
See that
okay.
you saying that you don't trust anything you say after 8 o'clock,
Yeah.
like that's how I am anything like before 9 a.m. Like
Oh.
I will, I will wake up and like check my phone and people will email me and I'm like, okay, yes, I will respond to that. And then the next day I'm like, yeah, no, didn't
My
send that
daughter
email,
is just like that.
and
It's
and it
terrible.
was like the response was like, yes, let's do that. Perfect time. No, but I just sort of think I do. And then or I'm like, I have to think about that. And then
Yeah.
the fact that it even happened is out of my mind.
No,
Right.
I too, I'll see a text at night, that comes in. And so it won't be on my notifications, right? Because I've seen it, but
You've
it's
seen it.
completely out of my
Yeah.
brain. And the next morning I'm like, oh,
Oh, yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm lucky if, or some
Yeah,
things.
it's me. I'm not
Yeah,
great.
whatever.
Okay. So, Jasmine, another thing, because we're just best friends now, have in common is that we both were lawyers. And I
yeah.
love
Not me.
I love
You
I
did.
love the whole
I was science.
exodus of lawyers to go into writing. That's like one of my favorite things. But
There are a lot of us.
there
I
are a
know,
lot-
especially in crime fiction too.
there are a
Yeah.
lot of us.
A lot in romance too.
Is
Yeah.
there
Oh,
really?
really?
Yeah, a ton in romance. Yeah.
That's really interesting. So I'm wondering if you could tell us about that transition from practicing law to writing.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons I started writing was I missed having that creative outlet. I think it was partly that, and actually partly, I mean, this is very nerdy, but like I missed being in school. I missed the experience of learning something new and like having that kind of aha moment. And so
You're
I
like,
started
Yeah.
writing, I
Mhm.
think partly for that, and to kind of have that learning time and that struggle, and then like, oh, I got it. That I think that feeling is one of those things that you can't replace with anything else. And so so that I kind of started writing that way and wrote like occasionally at lunchtime, usually after work. And for the for the beginning of my writing career, I was juggling both. I wrote my first 3 published books while I was still working full time, but I had been writing for years before that while I was working full time. And so
Mhm.
kind of learning to juggle doing both and kind of figure that out was definitely a transition.
Mhm.
So learning about romance is something that I'm doing right now. I've been, I just am very intrigued. And so I'd love to know what your thoughts are about, like, for example, there's a lot more sex in romance books than there are in thrillers.
Yes.
Yes.
And I I think that is a really hard thing to write. You do a great job of it. How
Thank
did you get good at writing intimate scenes?
For me, they're really about I think everything in my books goes back to knowing who those characters are, right? And knowing who they are in general, but also in that moment. And so what is their relationship like at that point in the book? Because because sometimes it's at the beginning when they barely know each other, towards the middle when they're kind of in the process of falling in love, if they are already in love but they're not quite admitting it to themselves or each other. And so what is that connection like between the two of them? Are they brand new to each other? Are they discovering new things, or are they already like super comfortable with one another? And that is that's a different way of relating. And so I'm always kind of thinking about who they are, what they're coming into this moment with, what kind of baggage they have, what they're excited about, what they are having fun with together, what attracted them to each other initially, and what has kept them attracted to one another. And so I think thinking about all of those things is what really makes it matter.
Right. Do the different, I mean, is there like any rules? Like in crime fiction, we have like cozy mysteries, and there, murder can't be as graphic as others. Is the same thing in romance? Like there's different groups of.
It's funny because there's sort of, but I feel like everybody does a very different thing with it, right? And so I mean, each of my books has like had a kind of different amount of sex scenes depending on what works for the characters, you know. For some characters it's not a lot because of the nature of the book and their relationship, and then some characters it's totally different. And so
Right.
I think romance is a little bit more flexible in that. Sometimes I think it depends on kind of where you start and what your readers expect from you, but I have liked being able to kind of go back and forth and see how it is in different books.
It reminds me of how like action scenes are in thrillers or mysteries, that it really should be based on the characters,
Right.
you know, how they're handling that.
Yeah.
And I love that answer. That's so interesting.
Yeah. Did you want to ask about tropes?
Yeah, so talk about tropes is a word I'm just learning about.
I know.
So tell us a little bit about tropes, because our readers aren't as knowledgeable about romance, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I think tropes are just sort of like different kind of situations, right? That that books can be sort of based around. And I think mystery has them too. They just are described in different ways, right? There's like the locked room, or there's
Right.
the, you know, the
gumshoe,
yeah, exactly. And so romance has those, and there's the like fake dating, or enemies to lovers, or workplace, or you know, like your brother's best friend, that kind of thing. And so I think people like kind of specific things about those tropes, and it is always fun for me to kind of explore them and see like, what do I like writing about this, what is fun for me, and also kind of how you can like kind of turn it on its head a little bit, and what you can change and express differently about yourself. And so I feel like every book like that is very different, right? You can give the same trope to like 10 writers and we will all have very different stories, and that's what I think is so fun and interesting about them.
I have a friend whose mother is obsessed with two different kinds of novels, and one is Amish mysteries.
Oh.
And the second one is like billionaire secretary relationships in romance. And I isn't that funny? They're so specific. And he had said to me recently, he's like, I can't find any more of each of them. Like, I'm trying to buy her, and she likes large print. And so you're really limited, you know?
Right. You're really limited.
But you know, it's so great when you have readers that know exactly what they want, but then you can still surprise them.
Exactly.
Like, that must be such a thrill.
Yeah. And hard.
Oh my gosh.
Thrill and hard. So that's why it's so thrilling, I guess. Anyway, one other thing that I noticed on your website is you also do Amazon original short stories with KeKe Palmer. And I was like, well, how did that come about? It sounds so fun, but how did that come about?
Yeah, you know, that was really fun. I did 5 short stories with KeKe Palmer that are all interconnected. And so she sort of had this universe of characters that she was doing skits about on her Instagram. And so like together, you know, KeKe had these ideas for an overarching story that would bring all these characters together. And so the two of us worked together on stories for that. And so like she kind of came up with the plot, and then we would kind of, you know, have calls and go back and forth about certain things. And then I wrote stuff, and then she had comments, and we went, you know, edited it together. And that was really a lot of fun. She's so creative and interesting, and it was fun to do something collaborative, because so often writing is such a lonely profession. And so it was nice to have someone to bounce something off of and do something so different than what I normally do.
Fun.
We talked to quite a few co-writers on projects, and I'm fascinated by that, because as you say, it's normally a solitary thing, but also that's the reason people love to write is they have control of that world. And so to share that, I think is really interesting.
Yeah, and everybody does it different, so that was interesting.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I find it, I mean, I've always found it fascinating to talk to people who've written things together. And so it was a fun time to write something with
That's
someone.
cool.
We wrote a book journal together.
We did collaborate on that, and that was interesting. Just how we would send pages back and forth, and
Yeah.
And that was very different than our podcast. So that's that's
fun.
really cool.
Yep. So,
What are you working on now?
oh,
I'm in the very early stages of the next book, so fingers crossed we'll see what happens with that.
And is it being handwritten right now, or is it being typed?
a
still
little
in
bit
the
of both.
mulling stage.
So we'll see what happens.
I love it. I
Yeah,
love that.
Yeah. So,
Final question.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
So we always ask the same thing of the authors we get to talk to, a lot of who love food. And
Yes.
I know this is perfect for you because if you subscribe to Jasmine's newsletter, as I do, she always shares recipes, which is so great. But so the question is,
Which of your characters would you like to share a meal with, and what would it be?
Oh, the first character who comes to mind is Carlos, who was in my second book, The Proposal, because he loves to cook, and I think we would have a lot of fun cooking together. Although we might get in each other's way in the kitchen because we're both like kind of people who like to be in charge in the kitchen, so that might be a struggle. But I think we would have a whole lot of Mexican food, probably either like a real big taco spread or enchiladas.
Yum. Now I'm hungry.
I know, I'm like, we haven't had lunch yet.
Is that Carlos who was in the first book?
Yeah, he was
Okay.
also the best friend of Drew from the first book.
Okay.
Was one of the stars.
No, I was thinking to myself, oh, tacos for sure.
Yeah.
Because I remember him
Yeah.
going to the taco
I love
place.
that when you have reoccurring characters that, I know it's an offshoot, but I just love that when you see, because you're not quite done with them sometimes. And so
Yes,
it's nice to see
exactly.
them back. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so if our listeners have questions about you, and where should they go?
They can go to my website, jasmineguillory.com. I'm on Instagram at JasminePix. And you can find the link to my newsletter. Thank you, from my website. It's jasmineguillory.substack.com. And I'm on Facebook at Jasmine Guillory Writer.
Great. She's
Fantastic.
everywhere. Well,
She is everywhere.
well, we are just so happy that you could join us today,
Yeah.
and really, I think we'll cheers for you,
There we
and
go.
you can cheers later for
Cheers.
yourself. All right, congratulations.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jasmine.
Thank you so much. It was so great to talk to you guys.
You too. All right. Let's see. How do I do this?